In Colombia, President Gustavo Petro installed a new congressional session with a call to lawmakers to contribute to move forward environmental and social justice reforms. The U.S. National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, warned that July may be the warmest month ever recorded. And in Lebanon, thousands took to the streets in Beirut to express their outrage at the desecration of a copy of the Quran in Sweden. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Haiti's capital city, demonstrators took to the streets to demand the resignation of Prime Minister Henry and a reduction in fuel prices. Protesters burned tires and threw stones at the police, who responded with tear gas. Demonstrators called for the Henry government to lower the price of fuels, including gasoline, diesel, and kerosene. They also blamed the Prime Minister for the increase in violence in the country that saw 75 people killed and another 40 kidnapped from May 1st to mid-July.
Under Prime Minister Ariel Henry, we have had more kidnappings, more corruption, more insecurity, an increase in rape and unemployment, as well as poverty and power cuts.
In Guatemala, the Public Prosecutor's Office confirmed an arrest warrant against Eleonora Noemi Castillo Pinzon, Deputy Director of the Registry of Citizens of the Supreme Electoral Tribunal. The Public Ministry also confirmed that a raid was carried out at the Registry of Citizens. The Special Prosecutor's Office Against Impunity also carried out a raid at the Directorate of Human Resources of the Supreme Electoral Tribunal to seize documents, particularly the employment file of Castillo Pinzon. The statement from the 7th Court said the arrest warrant against Eleonora Castillo is for obstruction of justice. According to them, she refused to comply with the judge's order.
It was a search operation to seize documents.
What documents?
The record of the Deputy Director of the Registry of Citizens, who is currently the acting director.
In this context, dozens of people took to the streets to protest against the investigation launched by the Attorney General's Office against presidential candidate Bernardo Arevalo's Semilla Party. Guatemala has been rocked by 4 weeks by legal actions against the winners of the first round of elections, prompting protests at home and reproaches internationally for alleged election meddling. The Public Prosecutor's Office alleges irregularity in the collection of signatures during the founding of the Semilla Party.
Today is the 7th day that we are here calling for demonstrations, sending a clear message that leaders should be elected at the ballot box and not in the courts. That is the reason for the demonstration to reject the regressive agenda of the Congress of the Republic, the Supreme Court of Justice, and different state institutions that are trying to obstruct the Guatemalan electoral process. Above all, the Public Prosecutor's Office does not have jurisdiction over the Supreme Electoral Court, which is the entity that will have to say yes or no to a political party.
On Thursday, the Red Cross confirmed that 20 people were injured when a bus carrying migrants overturned on a Costa Rican road near the Nicaraguan border. The accident occurred near the small farming town of Los Chiles, and around 65 migrants were traveling from Panama to Nicaragua to continue the journey to the United States. According to Heinier Gonzalez, head of emergency response, the injured were taken in ambulances to the hospital in the city of San Carlos, some 90 kilometers from the scene of the accident. The official said one of them was in critical condition.
We have a bus that overturned off the road approximately 2 meters with a capacity for approximately 60 to 65 migrants. One was transferred in critical condition at the moment. 10 were transferred in urgent condition, and we are finishing the work of patient assessment to make a transfer to the hospital of San Carlos. They in stable condition.
In Colombia, President Gustavo Petro installed a new congressional session with a call to lawmakers to contribute to move forward his environmental and social justice programs. According to local analysts, the second legislative period that began this Thursday will test the capacity of President Petro to advance the social reforms he proposed to Colombians during his electoral campaign. Petro defended the need for a broad agrarian reform to solve one of the country's major problems, which is land tenure. Interior Minister Luis Fernando Velasco announced that the government will insist on processing a health reform that will give access to basic services to millions of Colombians in the countryside. In this context, President Gustavo Petro spoke about the negotiations between his government and the National Liberation Army. The head of state affirmed that the war between the state and the insurgency is coming to an end.
In terms of peace, we have undoubtedly taken initiatives which are debatable. I accept the discussion and the criticism. Nobody has the true answer to the question of how to achieve peace in Colombia. The country has advanced and regressed for decades. We have carried out the peace process with the ELN, and it is moving forward. Now there is a ceasefire with the National Liberation Army throughout the country. The war between the state and the insurgency, which is the one that produced the casualties, is coming to an end. No, I'm not a lawyer. The war is coming to an end.
In Brazil, President Lula da Silva ordered the completion of 186,000 unfinished projects of the Brazil social housing program, which was paralyzed after the 2016 coup against former President Dilma Rousseff. Our correspondent Brian Mir with details.
After the 2016 coup against President Dilma Rousseff, Brazil's social housing program was paralyzed. Last week, President Lula ordered all 186,000 unfinished projects to be completed. Now residents of Brazil's first social movement housing development are finally receiving their land deeds.
This project started throughout the struggle of free social movements. It started as a squatters' camp. And based on this need for housing, we managed to pressure the local government to donate the land. And our neighborhood was warned.
Like thousands of projects that followed it, the social movements in Nossa Prata neighborhood received subsidized financing from the federal government to hire a construction crew. They lowered costs by helping level the land and keeping the building site clean. In exchange, they agreed to pay 25 reais a month for 10 years to receive legal ownership.
This project started in 2008 during the second term of Mayor Ives Ribeiro, and so now we are finishing it, giving dignity to the residents by giving them the deeds to what is already theirs.
Although it took longer than expected, residents of Nossa Prata neighborhood are proud of the way that their pilot project was rolled out across Brazil.
This pioneering project had wings. This thing we started here in Paulista, Pernambuco, moved on to the national level and spread around the world.
Brian Mir, TeleSUR, Paulista, Pernambuco.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The U.S. National Aeronautics and Space Administration warned that July may be the warmest month ever recorded, according to monitoring tools from the European Union and the U.S. University of Maine, which combine ground and satellite data. Several daily temperature records have already been broken this month. NASA climatologist Gavin Smith indicated that these effects cannot only be attributed to the El Niño phenomena, a recurring climate event linked to the warming of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, which has just begun. Smith believes that what we are seeing is widespread warming, especially in the oceans. In the meantime, Smith predicts that this trend will continue because mankind continues to introduce greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And in this context, on Friday, the World Health Organization reported that a dengue outbreak is expected in Europe after the heat wave. The WHO expressed that it is possible that after the recent episodes of heat and rains, an outbreak could spread in different parts of the continent. Also, the head of the WHO's Tropical Disease Control Program, Rahman Velayudhan, added that the disease is reaching places where it was previously non-existent and that this is related to climate change. The organization urges governments to create action plans and monitor symptoms in the population. In western India, the death toll due to a landslide in the village of Irshalwadi rose to 16. The National Disaster Response Force reported that so far 21 people have been successfully rescued. The fatalities include 6 women and 4 children. Maharashtra Deputy Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis noted that heavy rains have forced the evacuation of nearly 11,500 residents of 4 districts over the past 3 days. The event took place in a small village of about 225 residents in Raigad district, part of the western state of Maharashtra, when heavy rains triggered a landslide at midnight on Wednesday, burying about 15 homes. In Colombia, an avalanche in the municipality of Quetame left at least 21 people dead and several more missing. This was confirmed by the governor of the department, Nicolas Garcia. The governor reported that 9 people are still missing and that he is committed and obliged to find them. Garcia explained that work continues with machinery to remove the large amount of earth slid by the avalanche and declared a state of public calamity in order to have the resources to attend to families affected by the disaster. The heavy rains generated a sudden rise of the Naranjal stream, which overflowed and swept away more than 20 houses in a small village in the area. At the end of the deadline for postal voting, Spain registered a record participation, with more than 90% of those registered under this modality ahead of the general elections on Sunday. The postal voting period closed with a record of over 2.4 million ballot papers issued. The number corresponds to the last official balance released and corresponds to 93.8% of the Spanish citizens who requested the vote by mail. The voting process closed at 2 p.m. local time, which was the legal deadline for casting the ballot paper, a deadline that was extended for 24 hours after the postal company asked the Central Electoral Board to extend it. On Friday, Russia's defense minister said Russian military vessels fired missiles at surface targets during naval exercises in the northwestern part of the Black Sea. The statement added that the crew of the attack vessel Ivanovets of the Russian Black Sea Fleet fired anti-armor cruise missiles at a target ship. The Russian ministry also said during the joint exercise that ships and fleet aviation worked on isolating the area temporarily closed to navigation and also carried out a number of measures to intercept a possible enemy vessel. The exercises come after the Kremlin announced that from July 20th, ships sailing in the Black Sea bound for Ukrainian ports will be considered possible carriers of military cargo. On Friday, Russian President Vladimir Putin reported that the Ukrainian military suffered massive losses during its attempted counteroffensive, and the West is struggling to maintain supplies of weapons and ammunition.
It's quite obvious that the Western sponsors of the Kiev regime are clearly disappointed with the results of the so-called counteroffensive that the Ukrainian authorities had talked so much about in the previous months. There have been no results yet. Ukrainian military units have suffered huge losses in suicidal attacks that amount to tens of thousands and despite constant sweep across Ukrainian cities and villages amid the ongoing mobilizations. It is increasingly difficult for the regime to send reinforcements to the front. The country's mobilization resources are increasingly exhausted.
On Friday, China vowed to take all necessary measures to safeguard its institutions and the integrity of its nationals overseas after a Chinese consular building in the Ukrainian city of Odessa was damaged in a Russian strike.
Regarding the Ukraine crisis, China's position has been consistent and clear-cut. We stay committed to and will continue to play a constructive role in promoting a political settlement of the crisis.
Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the start of construction of the first section of Arctic LNG-2, a gigantic liquefied natural gas project in the Arctic from which the French company TotalEnergies withdrew in 2022. Putin pointed out that the implementation of such projects will make it possible to double Russia's capacities within 5 or 6 years after the completion of the construction of a specialized port for the export of liquefied gas. The president also predicted that the completion of the second line of the project will influence the traffic on the Northern Sea route, which will increase and will be accompanied by the expansion of the fleet of high-class icebreakers destined to sail the Arctic Sea. Arctic LNG-2 envisages the construction of 3 liquefied natural gas production lines with an annual capacity of 6.6 million tons each, so that the total capacity of the project will be almost 20 million tons of liquefied natural gas per year. TeleSUR English launched its own videos on demand site for you to go and revisit our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Go to the top left corner in our website homepage and click on the video option to access our VOD platform. We will now take a final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back from the south. On Friday, thousands of people took to the streets in Lebanon's capital to express their outrage at the desecration of a copy of the Quran in Sweden. Protesters gathered at the rally called by Hezbollah, brandishing copies of the Holy Book and chanting, "With our blood, we protect the Quran." Some burned Swedish flags. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah called on Muslims to demand their governments expel Sweden's ambassadors. The demonstrations came after Swedish police permitted a protest in which an Iraqi of Christian origin, now a self-described atheist, living in Stockholm, kicked and stood on a Quran outside of the Iraqi embassy. On Friday, following a threat from Pyongyang of nuclear retaliation over growing U.S. military deployments in the peninsula, Seoul told North Korea that its use of nuclear weapons would mean the end of Kim Jong-un's government. On Thursday, Pyongyang's defense minister warned that this week's port visit of a U.S. nuclear-capable submarine to Busan, the first one since 1981, could meet the legal threshold for the North to use its nuclear weapons. Last year, North Korea adopted a sweeping nuclear law setting out an array of scenarios in which it could use its nuclear weapons, including preemptive nuclear strikes if threatened. On Friday, Seoul's defense ministry said in a statement that as Seoul and Washington have made clear before, any nuclear attack on the alliance will face an immediate, overwhelming, and decisive response. India, the world's largest rice exporter, prohibited with immediate effect the sale of non-basmati white rice. The decision could further raise international rice prices. The Ministry of Food and Consumer Affairs said in a statement that the prohibition should ensure an adequate supply for Indian consumers and mitigate price increases in the domestic market. Rice prices rose sharply due to the pandemic, the Ukraine crisis, and the impact of the El Niño weather phenomenon on rice yields. Indian exports of non-basmati white rice represent about 25% of India's total rice exports. India's decision could increase food insecurity in countries dependent on rice imports such as Turkey, Syria, and Pakistan. 3 months into the civil conflict in Sudan, fighting continues unabated and on Thursday caused the temporary interruption of power supply and telecommunication services in the capital of Khartoum. Fighting between the armed forces of Sudan, which answer to the military government, and the rebel group known as the Rapid Support Forces continues in Khartoum, North Khartoum, Omdurman, and North Kordofan. New armed clashes between two warring sides comes a day after 14 people were killed in a drone attack by the paramilitary group on civilian communities in the capital's south, according to a military spokesman. For its part, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs estimated in a report that the fighting in this territory has claimed the lives of more than 1,100 people since April to date, with more than 12,000 wounded. In South Africa, a body was found in central Johannesburg early Thursday after an unexplained explosion ripped through a major road during rush hour. Witnesses reported chemical odors and fumes escaping after the explosion, which damaged the road surface and overturned vehicles, including minibus cabs. The road was closed while investigators searched the area. The premier of Gauteng province, Panjasa Lesufi, said a preliminary inspection had not revealed the cause of the blast. Emergency services initially blamed subway gas pipes, but the city's private gas company said it was unlikely to be the case as customers continue to receive their supplies without interruption. In Cambodia, the 18 political forces that will compete in the national elections of next July 23rd closed on Friday their campaigns. The parties carried out peaceful campaigns that include meetings with their supporters, home visits, concerts, video projections, and profiles in social medias. According to a National Electoral Council report, all participating groups enjoy the same broadcasting time to promote their political programs on state radio and television. The Secretary General of the Royal Academy of Cambodia, Yang Peu, reaffirmed his optimism that the ruling Cambodian People's Party will once again win a landslide victory in the upcoming elections. Now we have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find this and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net, and you can join us on our social medias on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.